Thank you.
Hi. It's customary to make a sacrifice to the demo gods. Let's hope I get this right. My fortune says, may your presentation have as many twists and turns as Lombard Street. We're going to find out in a minute. Let's get started. Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to the second day of DockerCon. And welcome to the Software Defined Society. You see, I think that we're all collectively working on a really grand experiment, a gigantic undertaking. Together, the 5,000 people in this room and the thousands of organizations that you represent and the thousands of other people that are watching the live stream, collectively, what we're doing is we're rewriting the way society works. Instead of a society where the rules are written in a law book, I believe in the future, the way the world's going to work is that it'll be a society governed by software, where the rules are encoded in software that governs every human interaction and every transaction between people and machines. That's the grand project that we're working on. I'm excited to take part in it. Welcome to the Software Defined Society. And of course, container-based virtualization plays a fundamental role in making this happen. Now today, there'll be a whole bunch of other speakers who are going to show you inspiring examples of what you can do with Docker containers. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to try to do is link this phenomenon to a much bigger trend. And make no mistake, Docker is a phenomenon. It's incredible. They showed me this chart, and I said, that is amazing. It looks to me like Docker is the fastest growing piece of software in history. And actually, this chart's out of date. You just heard it from Betty. The real figure is 50 billion polls, 50 billion downloads. That's quite extraordinary if you think about it. 50 billion polls. That means this chart is doubling faster than I can even keep up with it. You hear a lot of folks in San Francisco, futurist folks, talk about exponential growth of accelerating technologies. Folks, this is what exponential growth looks like. And it's no accident. Yeah, right on. It's no accident. Docker containers solve really serious problems. For the last 10 years, we've kind of decomposed the server-side stack. Replace that software with a series of microservices. It seems like an endlessly long list, a growing list of microservices. And that's a really brilliant architecture, but it introduces all kinds of complexity. And Dockers are like the perfect vessel for managing and orchestrating those microservices. So that's one thing that Docker does. But the other reason Docker is growing so fast is that we're starting to change the way we think about the cloud. You see, this idea of like a one-size-fits-all public cloud, that doesn't work for everybody. Some people need data on-prem. They're required by regulation or by SLAs to have data on-prem. Other folks need compute power right at the edge, and these people need hybrid cloud. And no company wants to be locked into a single vendor. So everybody needs a multi-cloud strategy. And again, as you heard yesterday and you'll hear today, Docker provides solutions for that as well. What Docker's really doing then is it's unleashing a torrent of innovation. A lot of companies that are interested in the cloud were a little bit hesitant to get into it. Docker frees them. Docker gives those companies the control of their fate. They control their own destiny. That's incredibly liberating. That's a new way to think about the cloud, and that's one of the reasons why you're seeing that phenomenal growth. When we talk about the cloud, some people define it very narrowly. They talk about it as a way to save money, a way to maximize your OpEx. That's definitely true, but I think that's a really narrow way to define it. You know, software as a substitute for physical infrastructure. Sure, that's definitely true. And again, Docker helps you be more efficient. You're able to optimize how you use server-side resources. No question about it. But I think there's a much more interesting phenomenon at work here. It's the cloud as an accelerant. See, the cloud speeds things up. And in particular, the cloud speeds up innovation. It's speeding up innovation at a rate that we can all barely keep up with. Yesterday, I spent all afternoon talking to executives from some of the companies here, and all of them expressed how fast things have accelerated in the last 18 months, and they expect that to continue into the future. The cloud accelerates innovation in several different ways. One of the ways it does it is internally, inside of your organization. Every one of the thousands of developers that are present in this room today, every one of the organizations you're at has now adopted an agile development methodology. You shift it over to DevOps, and that means that you're in a process of continuously releasing code. We saw examples of that yesterday. where you can actually launch an app in minutes. So that means you're able to continuously test, continuously ask your customers, how are we doing? Did we get it right? You continuously get that feedback. You continuously make improvements. That's like a conversation with customers. And so I think actually DevOps methodology isn't just something that's confined to the IT department or the development team. It's actually going to change the way companies are organized. I would not be surprised to see more and more companies adopt DevOps as their organizational principle in the future. As we spend more and more time in digital environments, and as companies migrate more and more functions to the cloud, I think you're going to start to see that DevOps methodology spread through entire organizations. And that's great news for the IT leaders who are here, for the CIOs, the chief digital officers who are present, who are watching. I think it's great news for you because it means you're going to have the ability to define the way your company is organized in the future. The experience you're developing right now is going to start to shape how your entire enterprise looks in the future. So that's one way that the cloud is driving innovation. It's reshaping organizations and making them more agile. That's one way. But there's another way the cloud drives innovation. It's competition. A couple years ago, the folks at Upfront Ventures published this chart, and it blew my mind. It shows a 1,000-fold decrease in the cost of launching a new business. And there's two principal reasons for that: the advent of open source software and then the launch of cloud services that drove down the cost by 1,000-fold for startup companies. And so what we're starting to see is a proliferation of new businesses across every single industry. That's increasing competition, and of course what that's going to do is drive innovation. It's not limited to the IT business or the software business. My friend Andrew Hessel is a biohacker, and he was trying to explain synthetic biology to me. And he said, look, you can do this all in the cloud. The laboratories are available as a cloud-based service now. So he said, look, the next biotech billionaire will start her company at a Starbucks with a cell phone and a laptop computer, and she'll use her credit card to put all the infrastructure on the cloud. She won't necessarily need to raise a huge amount of upfront capital to launch that business. And that idea is not limited to biology. That's happening in agriculture tech, fintech, and across 100 different sectors. So we're starting to see a huge amount of creativity unleashed in startup businesses because the cost of launching a business is just so cheap right now. Yesterday, Gareth told us that we are living in the golden age of developer tools. That's definitely true, and I think there's actually a bigger idea behind that. We are living in the golden age of tools in general. Right now, there are literally thousands of cloud-based tools that enable small businesses to launch at very low cost or even no cost. Many of these apps are available at no cost, and they'll allow a small business to operate just like a large business. They allow small businesses to manage things like payroll and employees, manage projects long distance, manage communication, storage, sharing of files, even e-commerce. All of these solutions are available at almost no cost. So again, that's driving down the cost of launching a startup, and that's accelerating innovation. It really is true now. You can launch a business from your home. I think everybody knows somebody who's doing something like that. But even more important, what this picture is trying to show is that there's a new idea enabled by the cloud, and that is placeless innovation. Placeless innovation. Innovation can happen anywhere. It used to be you had to move to Silicon Valley if you wanted to be a part of the startup scene. But recently, the famous investor Peter Thiel made an interesting statement. He complained. He expressed frustration about the cost of operating a business in Silicon Valley. He said most of the money that he gives to startup companies goes to landlords in the form of lease payments for office space, but also a huge portion of the salaries that are paid to those employees goes in the form of rent. He actually referred to the landlords as slumlords. And he said he's moving out of Silicon Valley. He's frustrated with the high cost of launching a startup business here. But thanks to all these cloud-based tools, you can now launch a business anywhere. I was just in Moscow. Before that, I was in Warsaw, in Stockholm. In a couple weeks, I'm going to be down in Australia, in Adelaide, and Sydney. Everywhere I go, I meet startup companies that are using these cloud-based tools to innovate, to launch businesses cheap and fast. Now, you might be thinking, why is this guy talking about so much competition? That's a little bit scary. Sure, it's true. I mean, we get freaked out when we think about the proliferation of competition, but competition is actually a good thing. I was in Bangkok, and I was watching these boxers sparring at Lumpini Stadium, and it made me realize competition is good because it brings out our best game. It causes us to get better at what we do. Competition drives innovation. I want to talk about a concept. I'm going to introduce one concept here, the adjacent possible. You may have heard of the adjacent possible if you read Stephen Johnson's books. He talked about it in the book, Where Ideas Come From. But the idea of the adjacent possible was coined by a complexity theorist named Stuart Kauffman. And Stuart was looking at biological systems, and he had a realization. He said, every new idea, when somebody comes up with a new idea, a new platform, a new technology, it makes a whole set of other new ideas imaginable for the very first time. That's what he called the adjacent possible, and it works like this. Let's take any industry, the industry that you're in. We could have a conversation about what do you think is going to happen in your industry in the next 5 years. And I think everybody would agree that there's a probable outcome. If all trends hold steady, if the present trends continue, we can just do a linear extrapolation forward in time, and we'll all agree that there's a kind of likely outcome that's going to happen. That's the likely future state. But everybody with ambition in every industry has a different idea. They have a desired state that they want to get that industry to move towards. Now, we have different ideas of what those desired states might be. But as you can see, there's no line that connects the present state to that desired state. How do you get there? We use a technique called backcasting. First, we define what that future desired state might be, and then we work our way backwards, and we identify all the steps that are missing, all the steps that are necessary in order for us to achieve that desired state. Each of those steps is a new idea. Each of those steps is an idea that unlocks the next part of the adjacent possible and gets us closer to that desired state. So think of it like this. Imagine your whole industry is inside of one room, like this, big room. And you've maxed out that room. But somebody comes up with a new idea for a way to do business in that industry. It's like they opened up a door into a new room. And so a bunch of people rush into that room, and pretty soon they fill that room, but then somebody comes up with a new idea, and they open up a new door to yet another room, and so on, and so on, and so on. That's how the adjacent possible works. Each idea opens up a new room, a new possibility space that the entire industry can move into. And this isn't happening on a single dimension. This is happening on multiple dimensions simultaneously. The cloud accelerates this process because it knocks out the cost of innovation. It knocks out the risk of trying out new ideas. And so what the cloud is really doing is it's expanding the cone of possibility dramatically. And the scale of this opportunity is so great. Let me try to illustrate it to you. So we know every enterprise uses about 1,000 cloud-based applications. But we also know that most big enterprises have thousands of applications that they haven't yet migrated to the cloud. That's why we know this is going to continue to grow. That cone of possibility is going to continue to expand. You've probably seen these kind of charts, these landscape charts that show you all the players in a different technology sector. This one comes to us from a company called chiefmartech.com. And I love this chart. This shows marketing technologies. And you can see the proliferation of cloud-based tools for marketing. Back in 2011, they were tracking 150 companies, and then that doubled by 2012, and it doubled again a little bit more by 2014. Today, there's 7,000 companies that they're tracking. This is what that chart looks like today. Look at this thing. It's like going to an eye doctor. It's worse than an eye doctor's chart. You need a magnifying glass to understand it. 7,000 companies. If you just took 10 minutes to evaluate each one of these companies, it would take you more than 2 months to grind through this entire chart. But even this chart doesn't show you how complex the situation actually is. Because most of the companies that use these tools are now using APIs, and they're weaving together their own version. So it's like recombinant technology. It's like a biological process of innovation. That's what the cloud begets, further innovation. And it is like a biological process in the sense that not every company is going to survive. It's a Darwinian process, the survival of the fittest. And what Darwin told us is it's not the strongest company that's going to survive. It's not the most intelligent group of people that's going to survive. It's the company that's best adapted to change that will survive in this period of rapid proliferation of ideas. See, it's not enough to say, oh, my company's going to adopt cloud technologies, we're adopting containers and so forth. That's technological change. You also need a mandate from the leadership of your company to drive that change through the whole organization if you want to succeed. Companies have to be adaptable to change. Now, for most people, this is an invisible process. Software is hard for people to envision. If you don't live in Silicon Valley or another innovation center, it's pretty hard to get a sense of disruptive innovation. We hear about it, we talk about it, but we can't see it. It's an invisible transformation. And for most people in this country, most people who live outside of California, the only sign they see of disruptive innovation is a sign hanging in the window of a familiar store that says, we're going out of business, everything must go. 2017 was a brutal year for retail. 10 major chains closed. More than 10,000 shops closed. 100,000 jobs are lost. These are the people who reach an evolutionary dead end. Organizations that are saddled with too much real estate, too much physical asset. They couldn't dematerialize fast enough. They couldn't adapt fast enough. They missed that Darwinian process. And every time one of these chains goes out of business, it reminds us of something else. It reminds us that we've given up a habit that we used to have. For instance, when Blockbuster went out of business in 2013, It reminded us that we actually no longer use DVDs and Blu-ray discs. We stream everything today. It's like we just collectively as a society gave up a habit that we all used to have. And so we didn't need that store anymore. Some folks refer to this process as dematerialization. Dematerialization into software. Dematerialization into pure information. That's kind of a cumbersome term. I have a different phrase that I love to use. I call it vaporized. Literally, we're vaporizing stuff. Things that we use every single day. They're here one day, and then poof, they're gone in a puff of smoke. They disappear the next. It may seem like a fanciful notion to you, but think about it. Every one of the people in this room, all 5,000 of you, have a smartphone in your pocket. On average, you've got about 100 apps on that smartphone. And each of those 100 apps represents something that used to be sold in a physical retail shop in a box. We've dematerialized all of that. Amazon has dematerialized the book. They've vaporized the book. Amazon now sells more ebooks than hardbound and paperbound books combined. The music industry has gone through this process. And now cloud-based streaming services are driving the first uptick in revenue for the music business in 10 years. Remember maps? Remember the map business? Not a bad business, right? $15 for a piece of paper. Not a bad business to be in, but the map business has been completely changed. And a whole generation of kids are growing up with smartphones. They will never know what it means to be lost in a foreign city because of the cloud-based apps that deliver information and directions in the language of your choice. They show you where you are and where you're going next. When I brought the first mobile games to the United States in 2002, people thought I was crazy. Today, mobile games comprises the largest segment and the fastest growing segment of the $36 billion game industry. Vaporizing games has transformed the economics of the game business, and that's not all. It's also changed the way we design and build games. Today, mobile games represents about 44% of the revenue in the game industry. By 2020, it'll be half the revenue, and very soon it's going to be the biggest and fastest growing segment. Now, my colleagues and friends in the TV business hate it when I say this, but actually television's in the process of being vaporized as well. Most Americans subscribe to streaming services, right? Most Americans subscribe to more than one. All the future growth in the TV industry is going to come from cloud-based streaming services. It will not come from traditional broadcasting. And when I say we're vaporizing TV, I don't mean we're just vaporizing the disc or the video or something like that. I mean we're actually vaporizing the infrastructure of television. In the old days, if you wanted to be in TV, you had to buy a broadcast station with a big tower and some spectrum, or you had to put a satellite up in space, or you had to pull wires to the ground. That's over. Today, if you want to be in the video business, you can launch a cloud-based video streaming service in a weekend. And that's why we're seeing thousands of video-on-demand services launch all over the world. This phenomenon is not limited to the United States. This is happening on a global scale. The entire industry is shifting over to cloud-based services. So when I talk about vaporizing things, what I mean is that we're replacing physical stuff, physical things, with invisible software. And it's not limited to media. It's not just about maps and music and TV. We're actually replacing physical products. Think about it. In the last 10 years, your smartphone has absorbed the functionality of about 25 different consumer electronics devices. And for the companies that make those consumer electronics devices, the consequences have been catastrophic. Consumer electronics companies that make MP3 players and digital cameras and navigation units and so on, they've experienced double-digit decreases in sales over the last 10 years, while the smartphone has increased in sales 500-fold. So if you miss the curve, if you miss this process of dematerialization, the consequences are swift and severe. Now, I guarantee you, you're going to look at the world differently when you leave this place, because once you start to look for vaporization, you see it everywhere. It's an invisible process, but you're going to start noticing familiar things that are disappearing from your life. We used to have this whole infrastructure for dating, for instance. Today, there's an app for it. Last winter, I got a note from my doctor's office. They said, hey, it's flu season. There's a lot of sick people in the doctor's office. Don't come here. If you want to talk to a doctor, use our mobile app. You can talk to a doctor over your phone. We're vaporizing the office visit. Companies like Uber and Lyft, they're changing transportation. They haven't vaporized the car yet, but they've certainly vaporized the dispatcher, and they're working very hard to vaporize the driver of that car as well, replace that person with software. When I wrote my book, Vaporized, the most controversial chapter, surprise to me, was the one about the university. See, I believe that the university is going to get vaporized as well. A lot of folks at universities resist that notion, so they didn't like it too much. But the fact is that every major university in the United States now offers a streaming version of their curriculum online for free. And you might wonder why they do that. These universities charge $30,000 to $60,000 for tuition. Why would they offer their product for free? The answer is they have no choice. They have no choice because these venture-funded, cloud-based learning platforms are designed to scale to reach an audience of billions of people. Most of those people will never have the opportunity to set foot on an American college campus, but they're going to get a good education through a streaming video platform. You might wonder where this is going to stop. I got news for you. It won't stop. We are going to keep finding ways to replace physical stuff with software until everything that can be vaporized will be. When I wrote my book a couple years ago, there were 1.3 million apps in the Apple App Store, 1.3 million. Today, that figure is 2.8 million. And by 2020, that number will be 5 million apps. 5 million. And when we talk about 5 million apps, remember, these are things that used to be sold in a retail shop. These are things that used to be sold in a package, produced in a factory, put on a container ship. All of that is being replaced by software as well. We have a full digital supply chain that's starting to replace the physical supply chain. This is an extraordinary transformation. Economists tell us that the invisible, vaporized economy is growing at twice the rate of the real economy. By 2021, it'll be almost a $7 trillion business opportunity. And that's just the commerce around mobile phones. There's a lot of other opportunity out there. You see, when I talk about 5 million apps in the future, they're not all going to be the apps that we download today to our smartphone. Our behavior is starting to change as technology evolves us. So for instance, in the future, your future app might consist of an intelligent chatbot inside of a messaging app like Kik. There are already 20,000 of these chatbots on Kik. Or it might be a voice command skill on Alexa or some other device that you can talk to. There's already more than 30,000 Alexa skills. So these are also a kind of vaporized app. The point I'm making is simple. Vaporization is starting to reshape the world around us. Familiar things are disappearing, and new superpowers are coming to us every single day. So the folks at the big enterprises right now, I'm imagining you're out there and you're thinking, what about us? Surely he's not going to say that we're going to vaporize a big enterprise. Yes, I'm going to say that, folks. In fact, this is a 40-year trend. A couple years ago, the merchant bank Ocean Tomo published this remarkable chart. This chart shows you the components of value in companies in the S&P 500. The purple represents physical, tangible assets. The blue represents intangible assets. And what you can see is that in 1975, 85% of the value of a company was in the form of physical assets, like factories and inventory and materials and so forth. But by 2015, that had completely reversed. 84% of the value of a company is now in the form of intangible assets. This is a gigantic long-term trend. What the stock market is telling us is that they no longer they don't place as much value on physical assets like land, mineral resources, capital, or human labor. Instead, they're starting to place increasing amounts of emphasis on intangibles like intellectual property, proprietary data assets, the knowledge in the brains of your employees, and your proprietary business process. So what makes your companies valuable is already intangible. Wall Street's sending a very clear signal to every major company. Vaporize your business or face the consequences. There's no better illustration of this than what I call the smartphone decade. I want to show you what happened to the most valuable companies in the world over the last 10 years, these 10 years of the smartphone. This is the value of dematerialization. So back in 2006, the year before Apple introduced the iPhone, this was a list of the most valuable companies in the world, stack ranked by market capitalization. As you can see, it's dominated by energy companies like ExxonMobil, British Petroleum, and so forth. There's one tech company there, Microsoft, and a bank, Citigroup, and a conglomerate, General Electric. That was in 2006, the year before the iPhone. But by 2016, after the smartphone decade, this is what the chart looks like. Look at this. It's dominated by technology companies at much greater valuations than the energy companies. ExxonMobil's still there, but they shrank a little bit, and they're way down the list. But this chart was published in 2016. So a couple months ago, I said, I wonder what happened since 2016. Did it change? Are there new companies? Maybe it's changed in some way. Check this out. I updated the chart in April, and this is what happened. On average, these tech companies added $200 billion to their market capitalization in just the span of 20 months. These are the companies that are driving dematerialization. These are the companies that are driving cloud services, mobile computing, mobile apps, and artificial intelligence. And the stock market is rewarding them. But I did this update a month and a half ago, and so then I thought, I'm coming to DockerCon. I should probably update it. What happened in the month of May? What do you think happened? Did it go up? Did it go down? It's unbelievable. Here's May. In the month of May alone, most of these companies added $100 billion to their market capitalization. Even Facebook, which is having about the worst year they've ever had, grew in this period of time. It's really remarkable. So the stock market is sending a very clear signal to your company: dematerialize or else. Now you might think, well, wait a minute, Apple's a hardware company, so why are they on that list? Why are they dematerializing? What a lot of people don't realize about Apple is they're quietly building an enormous software business. If you took all the digital services, software sales, content sales, mobile apps, and so forth, if you took all those services and broke them out as a separate company, call it iTunes, and you listed it, it would be ranked number 87 in the Fortune 500, ahead of all these famous retail chains. Apple's quietly becoming a software company. And Apple senior management has already given guidance that they expect revenue from services to comprise half their revenue in the next 2 years. Watch this space. Yesterday, Steve Singh said every company will be a software provider. I agree with him. He's right about that. These trends drive it. Wall Street demands it. But that doesn't mean every company is going to be successful as a software provider. Not everybody's going to make the evolutionary cut. It takes two things to succeed. The folks at Capgemini and MIT Center for Digital Business published this awesome report with this great title: How Digital Leaders Outperform Their Peers in Every Industry. They looked at companies, 400 companies across every industrial sector, and they made a radical insight. Their observation is that the companies that are mature in both digital intensity and transformation management outperform their peers. You gotta get both right. It's not just about adopting new technology or digital transformation, it's digital intensity. It's a ferocious commitment to digital technology and a mandate from management to drive it through the whole organization. That's what Wall Street wants to see. The companies that master those two things generate 26% more profit than their competitors. That's why you don't need to worry about competition. If you get these two things right, the competition will take care of itself. You'll crush them. The timing's perfect because we're just about to launch the Internet of Everything. We've been moving in this direction for several years, for about 5 years. Now, a lot of folks, when they think about the Internet of Things, they think about smart devices or network devices. That's definitely a part of it, but that's not the whole story. It's not just devices. It's also about sensor networks connected to cloud computing, delivering digital services that generate huge data sets, really big data sets that are so big they exceed our human capacity for comprehension. That's why we need machine learning and artificial intelligence to manage and make sense of those giant data sets. Let me illustrate the scale of this opportunity for you right now. When everything's connected, we're going to take the hundreds of millions of computers that are already out there, the servers and the laptops and the desktop computers and so forth. Those are already connected to billions of mobile devices, and that number grows by about 1.5 billion each year. And soon, there'll be tens of billions of smart devices out there. And in turn, those smart devices will be communicating with trillions and trillions of sensors embedded in physical infrastructure, embedded in the environment, embedded in industry, embedded in our cities, in our buildings, even in our products and our cars. That's the scope of the opportunity. This is a chance to reinvent your business and grow to remarkable heights. It's not limited to technology companies. Every company is going to be a technology company. All those connected devices generate an enormous amount of data. In 2010, we crossed the zettabyte threshold. Before 2010, we used words like petabyte and exabyte to measure large data sets, but we needed a new word. We generated so much data in 2010. A zettabyte is 1 million gigabytes of data, and by 2014, we had quadrupled that amount. And every indication suggests that by 2020, it'll grow a further tenfold. And of course, that's just at that point when all the Internet of Things devices are going to happen. And so we're going to see that number grow and grow and grow. This is why we need artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are a consequence of big data. We need them in order to master all the data. This is going to transform companies. There's a concept that not everybody's familiar with called the digital twin. But I want you to remember this term, digital twin. It's already being used in some industries where they have very complex equipment. Think of like jet engines. So they're using digital twins in jet engines. What you do is you instrument that entire product with all sorts of sensors so that you can track every single part and you can determine whether or not there's wear and tear. And what they do is they build a perfect digital representation of that part, of that entire product. And the digital representation is like a software model that lets them know. It alerts them to the wear and tear, the use, the time to replace, the time to service it, and so forth. That allows companies to operate more efficiently. That allows companies to do predictive maintenance, anticipatory maintenance. This concept of a digital twin is going to be driven by these gigantic sensor networks that we're starting to install in everything. The way I like to think about it is this way. Software models. You can model anything in software. You can model a business process, you can model a job function, an entire company can be modeled in software. But in the past, those software models were confined to the network. They were confined to the digital domain. Today, what's different is software models are operating in the real world. Software models determine how things work in the real world. That's what the digital twin does. You use the software model, the digital twin, to decide how to operate that piece of equipment, how to optimize a plant, when to renew a product, when to optimize a process. The best illustration of this that I can think of is robotics. Now, I want to be really clear about this. I've been talking about vaporizing things and invisible software, and what you must understand is that software automation is enormous. It's an enormous process, but it's invisible, so I can't show it to you. Think of robots as that part of the iceberg above the water that you can see. That's what robots are. They're like a physical manifestation of software automation. Now, there's nothing particularly new about robots in manufacturing. Robots have been on the factory floor in auto shops for 30 or more years. But these robots are deaf, dumb, and blind. They can't see human beings. They're actually dangerous for humans to be around. The new generation of robots, thanks to sensors, actually can see us. This Baxter robot by Rethink Robotics cost about $22,000. That puts it in the range of every small business, every small manufacturer. And it's got a face on it. It can actually see you. It's not going to harm you. This means that robots can work alongside human workers, augment them, make them more productive. We're starting to see robots in every part of the supply chain. Robots can now handle very delicate tasks like handling produce or a bottle in this example. Some companies are rushing to announce that they're building the first robot factory. JD.com is one of the big e-commerce companies in China, and they have this whole robot facility that they just talked about. You're starting to hear about dark factories where there's no human workers at all. You just put components in one end and finished products come out the other side. It's like a machine that makes products. Adidas has announced that they've got a new thing, Speed Factory. It's a robotic factory that could do mass customization at scale. So those are robot factories, but other parts of the supply chain are also being robotized. For instance, ports. You now have robotic ports in Australia and other parts of Asia. Maersk, the giant shipping company, has announced a robotic container ship. No human people, no human crew aboard that ship. Already, we're testing robot trucks here in the United States, in Nevada, and also in Europe. Robot warehouses have been a thing for several years, thanks to Amazon's acquisition of Kiva. We're starting to see robots show up in the retail shop as well. These adorable robots from SoftBank, they're called Pepper, and they're designed to help people navigate through the stores and find things and make intelligent recommendations and so forth. But some folks want to vaporize the store altogether, and they're thinking about robotic drones that'll just do delivery straight to your home. Now, I know this sounds like science fiction, and I know there's probably some folks saying, come on, you can't possibly tell me that we're going to robotize all of manufacturing. Well, yeah, I can. Welcome to the adjacent possible. See, in order for us to get to a point where all those different robotic systems are stitched together, today they're all siloed and separate. To stitch them all together, we need a few things. First, we need rock-solid digital identity at the item level, at the individual item level. And I'm working with GS1, the global standards body for identification, to develop that, digital identity. The second thing is that we need smart contracts encoded into the blockchain to track those items as they move through the supply chain. The third thing we need is artificial intelligence to govern that, artificial intelligence that spans the entire supply chain. And the fourth thing we need is containers. Containers that allow us to use a multi-cloud strategy to track those products as they move from one robotic system to another. Guess what, folks? All four of those steps exist in some form already. There's your adjacent possibilities. There is the cone of possibility expanding. Now, in this short talk, I've covered an awful lot of stuff, and I've told you we're dematerializing everything we possibly can, from products to retail, consumer experience, the idea of ownership of physical goods, even dematerializing labor and intelligence. What some people take away from this is a mistaken impression that I'm saying that we're devaluing this stuff, that we're destroying the value in these things. That's not true. That's not what I'm saying. I want to be crystal clear with you. What I'm talking about is value multiplication. This is the key takeaway. This is why you're going to migrate as much of your business as you can to the cloud, because the value is in the network. When we dematerialize things, the value shifts to the network. And what Bob Metcalfe told us 40 years ago is the network is a value multiplier. Not just the telecommunications network, but all the networks in your business. that robust and rich developer network that does innovation on top of your platform, all those network products that generate all that data, that drive the network intelligence that helps you optimize your business. These are the building blocks for the future of your business. I urge you to go out and embrace them and drive that through your entire organization. Folks, I am Robert Tercek, the author of Vaporize, the 2016 Book of the Year. Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here at DockerCon. Thank you. Thank you.